terrifying reality of being trapped in a locked apartment with a bloated, waterlogged corpse that screams about the freezing depth of the ocean began the exact moment I moved into this isolated high-rise after my husband Mark tragically died. To explain how this nightmare took over my life step by step, we have to look back to the very first evening I spent alone in the dining room trying to maintain a normal routine. I prepared a large, hot meal for 2 people, set his favorite plate across from me, and sat down in the quiet room to eat by myself. At exactly midnight, the overhead dining lights flickered violently before going completely dark, and a freezing gust of wind slammed the balcony doors open, bringing a powerful stench of stagnant seawater into the room. I flipped on my flashlight, and the beam illuminated Mark sitting in his usual chair. But his skin was a sickening shade of gray. Thick patches of seaweed hung from his shoulders, and frozen ocean water constantly dripped from his clothes onto the carpet. His jaw dropped open unnaturally wide as he screamed that I had left him in the freezing water, and he began crawling across the table, knocking over glasses and plates in his path. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own chair and scrambling into the hallway, while the wet, heavy sounds of his dragging body followed close behind me. I managed to lock myself inside the guest bathroom, pressing my back against the wood while he hammered on the door with soft, bloated fists until the sun finally came up. The next morning, I inspected the dining room and found no water puddles or broken dishes, which made me think I was just suffering from intense sleep deprivation. That night, I tried to skip the dinner ritual entirely, but the lights cut out earlier at 11, and the wet footsteps began pacing right outside my bedroom door. I barricaded the door with my dresser, but the entity began smashing the wooden panels with a heavy object, leaving deep dents that I could see by the light of my phone. By the second week, the physical exhaustion was making me hallucinate during the day, and the wet, salty smell of the ocean began to permanently stain the carpets of every single room. The entity started appearing in the kitchen while I cooked, standing right behind me with raw, peeling fingers outstretched toward the stove, as if trying to warm its frozen limbs. I stopped buying fresh food entirely and lived on canned goods, staying awake for 48 hours straight with a heavy iron skillet gripped tightly in my right hand. The terror escalated further when the entity began using Mark's exact, distorted voice to call my name through the ventilation shafts, forcing me to scream at the top of my lungs just to drown out the noise. I knew I couldn't survive another night of this constant, aggressive stalking. So I resolved that the next time the lights failed, I would not run into the bathroom to hide. On a night when an actual tropical storm was rattling the exterior glass windows, the kitchen lights shattered completely, and the unmistakable sound of dragging, wet fabric moved rapidly down the hallway toward the living room. I held the iron skillet tightly, walked into the dark space, and watched the waterlogged figure rise from the floor, its white, sightless eyes staring directly into my face. With a final burst of adrenaline, I swung the heavy skillet forward with all my strength, striking the figure directly in the center of its face and shattering the dark illusion into pieces. The freezing wind and the smell of seawater instantly evaporated from the room, and the bright moon cut through the clouds, illuminating my actual surroundings for the first time in months. There was no corpse lying on the floor, nor was there any water on the carpet, because I was actually standing directly in front of the large mirrored wall in my bathroom, holding a shattered hand mirror. The sudden rush of absolute reality broke the thick mental fog that had kept me trapped, and the hidden memory of what really happened on the ocean finally flooded my brain. I remembered the sunny afternoon a year ago when our rental boat capsized 3 miles from the shore, throwing both Mark and me into the rough, freezing current. I had easily managed to grab onto the floating life ring attached to the hull, but Mark was struggling several feet away, desperately screaming for me to throw him the secondary rope. In my absolute, blind panic to keep myself secure on the slippery fiberglass, I had frozen completely, gripping the plastic ring and watching him sink beneath the surface without ever extending my hand to save him. My mind could not accept the monstrous truth of my own cowardice. So it had created this terrifying, daily hallucination of a vengeful ghost to punish me for letting him drown. I realized with absolute horror that the entity screaming about the cold water was just the physical manifestation of my own buried guilt, forcing me to relive the exact terror Mark experienced before he died. The heavy iron skillet fell from my hand, and I stared at my own pale reflection, finally understanding that the monster wasn't under the bed or behind the door, but living inside my own broken mind. The daily haunting was finally over, but the suffocating weight of my secret actions would remain with me for the rest of my miserable life. One last question: if you were in her place at that moment, would you have done the same? Be honest. What does her choice deserve out of 10? Subscribe now. The best story is coming next.